Bhaja Govindam, verse 3. Come out of delusion. Naristanabhara nabhidesham drishtva maga mohavesham etanmamsa vasadi vikaram manasi vichintaya varam varam Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate. Do not get drowned in delusion by going wild with passions and lust, by seeing a woman's external appearance and looks. Bodies are made of flesh, fat, and blood. Always remember this. External looks and body is temporary. Seek that which is permanent. Seek Govinda, seek Govinda. Let's listen to a story based on verse 3. One day, as King Shantanu was wandering on the banks of the river Yamuna, the air was suddenly filled with a fragrance so divinely sweet that the king sought for its cause, and he traced it to a maiden so lovely that she seemed like a goddess. A sage had conferred on her the boon that a divine perfume would emanate from her, and this was now pervading the whole forest. From the moment the goddess Ganga, his wife, had left him, the king had kept his senses under control. But the sight of this divinely beautiful maiden broke the bonds of restraint and filled him with a desire that overpowered him. Besotted with her beauty, the king asked her to be his wife. The maiden said, I am a fisher woman and the daughter of the chief of the fisher folk. You may please ask him and get his consent. Her voice was as sweet as her form. The father was an astute man. He said, O king, there is no doubt that this maiden, like every other, has to be married to someone, and you are indeed worthy of her. You have to promise me something before you can have her as your wife. Shantanu replied, If it is just a promise, I agree. The chief of the fisher folk said, The child born to this maiden should be the king after you. Though almost mad with passion for the maiden, the king could not make this promise, as it meant setting aside the godlike Devavrata, his son, born from Ganga, who was entitled to the crown after him. It was a price that could not even be thought of. He therefore returned to his capital, Hastinapura, sick with baffled desire. He did not reveal the matter to anyone and languished in silence. One day, Devavrata asked his father, My father, you have all that heart could wish. Why then are you so unhappy? How is it that you are like one pining away with a secret sorrow? The king replied, Dear son, what you say is true. I am indeed tortured with mental pain and anxiety. You are my only son, and you are always preoccupied with military ambitions. Life in the world is uncertain, and wars are incessant. If anything untoward befalls you, our family will become extinct. Of course, you are equal to 100 sons. Still, those who are well read in scriptures say that in this transitory world, having but one son is the same as having no son at all. It is not proper that the perpetuation of our family should depend on a single life, and I desire the perpetuation of our family above everything. This is the cause of anguish. The father, feeling ashamed to reveal the whole story, told this to his son. The wise Devavrata realized that there must be a secret cause for the mental condition of his father, and on enquiring the king's charioteer, he came to know of his meeting with the fisher maiden on the banks of the river Yamuna. he went to the chief of fishermen and sought his daughter's hand in marriage to his father. The fisherman was respectful but firm. My daughter is indeed fit to be the king's spouse, but should not her son succeed the king? But you have been crowned as the heir apparent and will naturally succeed your father. It is this which stands in the way of marriage. Devavrata replied, I give you my word that the son born to this maiden shall be the king, and I renounce in his favor my right as heir apparent. And he took a vow to that effect. The chief of fishermen said, O best of Bharata race, you have done what no one else born of a royal blood has done till now. You are indeed a hero. You can take my daughter to the king, your father. Still, hear with patience these words of mine, which I say as the father of the girl. I have no doubt you will keep your word. But how can I hope that the children born of you will renounce their birthright as you did? Your sons will naturally be mighty heroes like you, and will be hard to resist if they seek to seize the kingdom by force. This is the doubt that torments me. When he heard this naughty question posed by the girl's father, Devavrata, who was bent on fulfilling the king's desire, made his supreme renunciation. He vowed solemnly, with raised arms, to the father of the maiden, I shall never marry. Henceforth, I dedicate myself to a life of unbroken chastity. And as he uttered these words of renunciation, the gods showered flowers on him, and the cries of Bhishma, Bhishma resounded in the air. Bhishma means one who undertakes a terrible vow and fulfills it. That name became the celebrated epithet of Devavrata from that time. Thus, the son of Ganga led the maiden Satyavati to his father. In time, two sons were born to Satyavati and Shantanu, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya, who ascended the throne one after the other. Vichitravirya had two sons, Dhritarashtra and Pandu, born respectively of his two queens, Ambika and Ambalika. The sons of Dhritarashtra, 100 in number, were known as the Kauravas. Pandu had 5 sons who became famous as the Pandavas. Bhishma lived long, honored by all in his family until the end of the famous battle of Kurukshetra. The root cause of most of the problems is wealth and desire. In the beginning of Mahabharata, Devavrata, the first son and the rightful heir to the throne of Shantanu, had to take a terrible oath of not getting married and giving up the kingdom, and became Bhishma to satisfy the desire of his father, getting married to Satyavati, who in turn demanded the retaining of the throne for her grandchildren. Wealth and desire were the cause for this unjust demand. Adi Shankara reminds us that the body to which we are attracted is short-lived and made of just bones and flesh. So, he questions why do we crave for things that are temporary and get deluded. In our lives, we do have to pass through the stage of Grihasthashram, where one has to get married and have progeny and lead a marital life. That is common. But after a certain period of completing our duties, we should not be deluded more and more with all these desires which will not remain with us. So, Shankara tells us to chant the Lord's name, which will help us in this life and beyond. The eternal truth is that we are not the body. We are the soul which has no birth and death. But still, we give so much importance to everything else in our lives other than our soul, which is the only one always with us. Let us learn to grow spiritually stronger so that we are able to handle our lives better. Now for the students, let's listen to a story on power of belief. A businessman was deep in debt and could see no way out. Creditors were closing in on him. Suppliers were demanding payment. He sat on the park bench, head in his hands, wondering if anything could save his company from bankruptcy. Suddenly, an old man appeared before him. I can see that something is troubling you, he said. After listening to the executive's woes, the old man said, I believe I can help you. He asked the man his name, wrote out a check, and pushed it into his hand, saying, Take this money. Meet me here exactly 1 year from today, and you can pay me back at that time. Then he turned and disappeared as quickly as he had come. The business executive saw in his hand a check for $500,000 signed by John D. Rockefeller, then one of the richest men in the world. I can erase my money worries in an instant, he realized. But instead, the executive decided to put the uncashed check in his safe. Just knowing it was there might give him the strength to work out a way to save his business, he thought. With renewed optimism, he negotiated better deals and extended terms of payment. He closed several big sales. Within few months, he was out of debt and making money once again. Exactly 1 year later, he returned to the park with the uncashed check. At the agreed upon time, the old man appeared. But just as the executive was about to hand back the check and share his success story, a nurse came running up and grabbed the old man. I'm so glad I caught him, she cried. I hope he hasn't been bothering you. He's always escaping from the rest home and telling people he's John D. Rockefeller. And she led the old man away by the arm. The astonished executive just stood there stunned. All year long, he had been wheeling and dealing, buying and selling, convinced he had $500,000 behind him. Suddenly he realized that it wasn't the money, real or imagined, that had turned his life around. It was his newfound self-confidence that gave him the power to achieve anything he went after. One must have belief in oneself. Self-confidence is most important. No one can help us unless we believe in ourselves first. Many a times, as we are growing up, we tend to compare ourselves with our peers. We just see the external appearance and get carried away. We feel that people who look beautiful in appearance or those who talk well become popular and we try to imitate them. We are not happy about ourselves. We develop low self-esteem. We think what appears outside is always the truth. It is not necessarily so. From a young age, one should learn to be self-confident, develop self-esteem, and nurture the good qualities within oneself. One has to be strong from within. Appearances change and wilt away with age, but what is within never ever goes. That is one's inner strength. And as one grows up, building this self-confidence within, one will try to seek that self, which is the ultimate truth. Jai Sai Ram.